Manfrotto Monopod. Monopod. Yep, got it. Hello world, my name is Matt Spa, and I'm a video producer and photographer in Atlanta, Georgia. In this video, I'm going to take a look at a new monopod offering from Manfrotto and give you my 2 cents on it. If you're new here, my channel is about any and all things audio, video, and photo related. If you share an interest in any of that, I hope you'll consider subscribing. When Manfrotto first reached out to me about testing this unit, I flashed back to the only monopods I had ever used, which were kind of bulky and kind of heavy, and for my purposes, they were fiddly. Using a monopod requires some technique and muscle memory, and sadly, I just never used them enough to get to the point where I was beyond having to think about the logistics of the equipment. They just never became second nature to me, and consequently, I approached this piece of gear with a bit of skepticism. But a chance to try out new gear for free is rarely a bad thing, so I replied to their email in the affirmative. And a couple of weeks later, the Element MII video monopod showed up. And yes, that's how they say it. I actually wrote Manfrotto to confirm it. According to the email that I got back, the MII does stand for Mark II, and part of the reason for differentiating it comes from the fact that the previous version was made in China, whereas this one is made in Italy. There's a whole range of monopods and tripods that fall under that MII designation. So for the record, this is the Video Monopod Kit, which I'll link in the description below. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to refer to it as the Element M2. And for the record, they're not paying for this review, and all the opinions expressed are, of course, as always, my own. When it first showed up, I didn't realize what it was. The box was small, like way too small for me to think that it held a monopod. And that brings me to the first point on this piece of gear, and maybe the biggest selling point. It's compact. For anyone who is looking to travel light, this absolutely fits the bill. But like everything in life, that means that some trade-offs had to be made in its design, which I will get to later. The Manfrotto Element M2, when fully folded down, is just over 24 inches long. It has a maximum height of 54¼ inches, and it weighs a mere 2.3 pounds. As you might guess, it uses the Manfrotto style quick release plate, which I personally prefer to the Arca Swiss style plates. Overall construction is mostly aluminum, and despite the relatively small diameter leg sections, it's pretty rigid, and it exhibits very little flex even when fully extended. It has 3 folding feet that provide a small but stable base, not so stable that you would trust it to hold a camera without additional support, but they're there. When not in use, the feet fold upward, which helps to keep the length to a minimum for transport. There are 4 leg sections with swivel style leg locks that do a fine job of keeping everything locked down. A fluid head is included, and it definitely keeps with the theme of light and small. It's almost all metal, but it does have some plastic logo caps on the sides. Location of the knobs is convenient for a right-hander like myself, but if I had any complaint here, it would be that the release plate tightening knob is pretty small, which reduces the amount of force you can put on it, and it makes it hard to lay your hands on sometimes. But all in all, I never had a camera come loose, so it's obviously doing its job. In the event that the camera does come loose, it has the safety catch that most everything I think has now that must be disengaged before the plate can be removed from the head. It's worth mentioning this head will only enter the plate will only enter the head from one direction, so it's not, what'd you call that, ambidextrous, if it could, anyway. It only goes in from one side. The head itself is removable. It attaches via a 3/8 inch thread, so if you want to use it on a slider or anything that sports a 3/8 inch screw, you're in business. There is a spirit level that's built into the head, which is something I use quite a bit, particularly when shooting wide shots. It works great, but I'm not crazy about the placement. It's off to the left, so depending on how I balance my camera load, it can get obscured sometimes. It's also kind of down in a hole, which can make it hard to see in certain situations. But all in all, the head is very capable. It's definitely not stout, but it walks the line well between being lightweight and being functional. The head movement is slightly dampened on the tilt axis, but I found that once I got some weight on it, that dampening had pretty minimal effect. Your mileage, of course, will vary based on the weight of your camera. There is also dampening on the pan axis, but it's handled by this fluid pan base, which is conveniently labeled for some reason. The head itself does not pan. It is fixed in place, which might be an issue for you if you opt to use this head on another piece of gear. The fluid base is smooth and it has a nice amount of resistance. Once I got used to it, I could understand the benefits of this kind of setup. The fluid base means that your pan moves are done with your whole body and the support system, which I found pretty cool, but it is one of those muscle memory technique things that you're going to need to get used to. The head has a removable handle, which can make those pan moves even smoother. Here's a 2-cent tip when using any kind of dampened head. If you use an elastic band on a handle like this, it can help smooth out those pan moves, especially the starts and the stops. Also, this fluid base configuration means that you can use your support hand to dampen your shots to a certain degree. Again, this takes some getting used to, but it might well be worth figuring out if that's something that you do a lot of. A more general tip while I'm at it, and this applies to any monopod or tripod, take the time to balance your camera load as best you can. The quick release plate on this monopod is not very long, but between where you attach it to your camera and where you place it in the head, you can get everything pretty balanced over the center of the monopod, which is going to result in easier operation. And if you do this every time, you'll get consistent response even when using a different camera or lens combination, which in theory should help to accelerate your muscle memory acquisition and get you over the hump that I never got over earlier when I was using monopods. The pan action is not lockable on here, and there's also no locking lever on the feet. The feet lock in the down position, but you can't lock. How do I explain this? Some other monopods that I have used have had some type of tapered threaded lock thing at the bottom, and you can tighten that down to keep the monopod plumb. There's nothing like that here, but in using this monopod, I didn't miss having those options. I've been using this since it showed up about a month or so ago, and I've come to the conclusion that it does what it's designed to do, and it does it very well. And that's what I think is important to take away from this. If you're looking for the be-all, end-all, only monopod you'll ever need, this probably isn't it. And unless you do an extremely narrow range of work, that be-all, end-all doesn't really exist. The goal here was to create a light and compact but capable support system, which, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, means design trade-offs had to be made. And in my opinion, those trade-offs have been managed really well on this unit. It's very well suited to anything in the travel category where keeping size and weight to a minimum are a big deal. For macro work, where you need that extra stability, I found it really helped to minimize camera movement while not getting in the way. For event photography, it would be awesome because it's so unobtrusive. But if you decided you didn't need it, it would be pretty easy to just stash it somewhere if you had to. For sports photography, I had mixed results. With a 24-70 or something like that, it was fine. But with something longer, like a 70-200 lens, even if I used the lens-mounted support, it was just too much weight for me to get comfortable with. When I wanted to follow any action, the weight of the Element M2 that is below your hand position allows it to perform somewhat like a Steadicam. With some practice and a little bit of stabilization, it's quite usable footage. Bear in mind that on this shot, I'm on pretty uneven ground in heeled boots, dodging manure as I go. For video in general, it works really well as long as you don't overload it. I think the published specs on this say the max payload is 8.8 pounds, but in my experience, lighter payloads definitely yielded better results. A little sidebar here, while I was testing this monopod, I had a headshot session that wrapped up early, and I found myself with an hour to kill before I could go get something to eat, and there was a park nearby that I probably had not visited in 25 years, and I wanted to go shoot one of my no explanations, no excuses videos, but I had no camera support with me, no tripod, no monopod, no gimbal, nothing. I shot for about an hour or so, and when I edited that footage, after having used this for a month and looking at that footage, it was painfully obvious how much better that footage would have been if I had had the little Element Mark II with me. Based on that experience, I'm likely to end up always storing this in my car, so I'll have it on hand for situations like that. If you're looking for an extremely compact, lightweight camera support, I encourage you to take a look at the Manfrotto Element M2. It's hard to beat for portability, stability, and ease of use, but if you need to support heavier weight cameras, you might need to sacrifice the convenience of portability and get something that's got a little bit more heft to it. And that does it for this video. I hope you found something here helpful, and I thank you very much for watching.